This is episode 5 of Pulling Up From 40. Here with your boy Lucas and Colin. Colin, what's going on today, man?
Chilling, bro. Excited to be here. It's been a little minute, but ton to talk about and excited, man.
Yeah, super excited. We're at the quarter way through the season. We've gotten a little taste of the team, seeing what they're looking like, but you know, we don't have the whole thing yet.
I'm gonna I'm, not- I'm gonna leave it at
I was bringing back a Paul Pierce quote, man. You don't remember when Paul Pierce said that?
We're just getting a taste of them. I'm like, I'm tired of getting a taste of them. I want the whole load.
I don't remember that. The only thing I was thinking was
Oh,
pause. Heavy
oh,
pause.
it was definitely a big pause. But anyways, hey man, what are you thinking? What are you thinking of the top teams so far this year? Who are you liking? Who have you been surprised by? What are you thinking so far?
Yeah, man. It's been an interesting start to the season. Obviously, as Celtics fans, I feel like we'll hop into them for quite a minute from a talking perspective. But overall, I think the top of the both conferences is kind of as expected. I think if you start with the Eastern Conference, obviously the Celtics have been on a pretty ridiculous run. Highest offensive rating in like NBA history at this point. The team is just really rounding out really well. In terms of having those, bench guys coming in and just, being the supplement that was needed to help out, JB and Jason Tatum, kind of in the long run. Malcolm Brogdon obviously is going to be in that conversation for sixth man of the year. And they've just been super productive. They've got like 3 or 4 guys shooting over 40%. So it's been cool to watch them. And then rounding out the, kind of like top three, you got Bucks, Cavs, Nets at 4, Sixers at 5. I feel like all of that is pretty consistent with like kind of our preseason predictions and like where we thought that they would land. In the Western Conference, somewhat the same. Obviously, I think the early surprise is the Pelicans, a team that I know that you were high on when we were talking about like our Western Conference preview. I think we all saw them as a playoff team, as being competitive. But right now, with a healthy Zion, I mean, the guy is just, he's a freak. The guy doesn't miss. I mean, his field goal percentage is always out of the roof. CJ McCollum is just running that offense, perfectly. Valanciunas, Herb Jones. They haven't even had Brandon Ingram for the last like 6 or 7 games or so, and they're still hooping out here. So they're looking really good. Grizzlies, Nuggets, Suns, Trailblazers, they've been good, man. All of them are super competitive, and I think that's kind of the theme across the league right now. It's just that the talent is just like so high. There's not a night off for anybody. So I think it's going to be competitive down the stretch, but I'll save the who I've been disappointed in for a little bit later. But how about you? What are you thinking at the top of the league?
I mean, yeah. So, like the first few weeks of the season, like it was crazy seeing the parity in the league. Like even these teams that you're looking at now, like now there's a little bit of separation that we're seeing between the top and the bottom, right? But like
Facts.
for those first few weeks, it's crazy. Like even teams like I'm looking at OKC Thunder making some noise. The Spurs were making some noise. Obviously, the Jazz came out of nowhere and surprised everybody. The Pacers making some noise. Like teams that we didn't even like the Hornets, as terrible as they are, they had a moment
Trash.
where like they were actually winning some games.
Yeah.
But yeah, what I'll say about the top of the league is really, yeah, outside of the Pelicans, most of the teams I feel like we saw being at the top of their respective conferences, right? And it's still early. The key that we got to remember too is the Celtics were 19-20 last year at around this point in the season,
Hmm.
right? So like a lot can still happen. Like there's injuries that are going to happen. There's trades that are going to happen. Like, but I will say this: like the Western Conference, man, I have no idea who is going to come out of there. Like
Not a clue.
it's confusing right now.
Yeah. What's your take on the Warriors right now? Because it's kind of a weird situation. I feel like they're like that. We were talking just offline a couple seconds ago. Like they were super competitive with the Celtics. That game kind of resembled a lot of what the finals looked like last year, but they've struggled a lot against a lot of really good against that high quality talent. I mean, they got clapped by by the Bucks by about like 20 last night. What's
Yeah.
your thought on them overall?
I mean, so I think they'll be fine. When you're a team that's got continuity like they do, you saw the stats where the starters had like one of the best plus minuses in the league, but then their bench had like one of the worst. And they just got so many assets too. I think like they got to be a team that's making a trade at the deadline because you got such a tight window for this core. Like we don't know how much longer it's going to last, right? So
Yeah.
I could definitely see them making a move because they got good young talent. And I remember Warriors fans this summer were upset with them because they didn't re-sign Gary Payton II or Otto Porter, and it's kind of showing like, yeah, I mean, the fans might have been right, but I'm not ready to give up on them just yet. I mean, I saw what they did to the Celtics the other night. I know they lost to the Bucks, but like they didn't have Wiggins.
Yeah,
we'll see. I think they'll be. I think they'll still finish the top of the West.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. And kind of to your point about this window closing, I mean, Steve Kerr alluded to it like 2 weeks ago. He's like, we're looking, this could be our last ride. Next year could be our last ride. So, they've got, 2-3 years max with that kind of core trio that we've been watching for the last almost decade at this point, which is crazy to think about. But I think to your point, they've obviously lost quite a bit on the defensive end of the floor, but come playoff time, I think that it does kind of tighten up a little bit, especially just as the pace of the game slows down a little bit more. But yeah, I'm interested to see what they do. I think it wouldn't be far-fetched to see them, start moving pieces like Kuminga, Moody, even Wiseman, man. I think at this point, I think you almost have to move Wiseman if you're not going to play him. I mean, the kid's 21, 22.
Hey, but have you seen those G League highlights though?
I honestly haven't. So is he looking serious?
He's been going crazy in the G League.
But I think that
20 and 15.
But I think that
15. You know what I'm saying?
I think that kind of addresses the point though, is that the guy just needs minutes. You know what I mean? Like I feel like we're walking into that same category of conversation that everyone had about Marvin Bagley, right? When he came out of school, it's just like Marvin was a slightly different situation in that he was at like a bottom of the barrel franchise, also couldn't stay healthy to a certain degree. But you saw some promise, once he moved over to Detroit, when he was getting those consistent, 25, 30 plus minutes every single night, just trying to get his feet wet, for lack of better words, where on a team like this, where you have championship aspirations, there's just no opportunity for him to fail, right? Like you have to let him kind of work through those kinks. Nonetheless,
I'm saying like he was getting some burn at the beginning of the year. And
he was.
I guess maybe they started losing and started freaking out, but
yeah,
I'm at least like happy that they have the wherewithal to get him in the G League and playing, right?
Yeah.
To me, like I don't think they should trade Wiseman because he's like exactly what they need, right? Like if there's anything you look at the Warriors, is they need a shot blocking, rim running, dunker spot, alley-oop finisher. Like that's exactly what Kevon Looney like really isn't, and he's got a little midi to him too, right? So like I could see maybe.
I just don't know if they have the patience. I just don't know if they have the patience for him to get ready. Right, like is he ready come April? Right, when the playoffs start, is he a playable guy in that rotation? I don't know if that. I don't know if that's
like
that's
he's not
true.
even going to have to play that much too, because like they're really giving most of that. I mean, yeah, that's the thing. So like when the Warriors were at their prime, right? Like the death lineup was the lineup with Iguodala, but they don't got Iguodala right now, which is why I thought it was funny that Coach Kerr, did you see the game where after the Bulls game, he was talking to Caruso?
Said we'd love you here.
Yeah, we'd love you here. I'm like,
yeah,
yo,
because he needs that. It definitely is, but he needs that utility guy, and they just don't have it right now, and that's the problem.
Yo, Caruso would be a crazy nice addition to that team. I feel like.
Well, who knows what's going to happen with Chicago? They might be. We're going to talk about this a little bit later, obviously.
Right.
But like a guy like that is really what they need. Someone who can guard, basically, 1 through 3, and then give you a little bit offensively, shoot the ball, distribute when necessary, and they just don't have that right now, and something that they're definitely lacking.
Right. Now it's funny because like a bunch of people on Twitter after that whole exchange with Kerr and Caruso happened is like, oh, he could be very well talking about Team USA. Like,
Shut up.
man, come on.
Shut that up. Caruso is going on no one's team. Team USA.
Right. That's the advantage that you have, though. Like as a coach, you always have that out of saying, "Oh, if you coach Team USA." That's why I kind of feel like NBA coaches like maybe shouldn't be allowed to coach Team USA because that's like a
strictly a college job
advantage, right? Well, no, it's just like a tampering advantage. I feel.
Oh no, I know what you mean. I was saying more so like it should only be like the top college coach who's coaching Team USA or something.
Yeah,
I don't know,
something like that,
or someone who's like hypothetically Popovich retires from the NBA, but then goes, Team USA only or something like that.
Something like that. I feel like it's
something where there's
fair.
Yeah, it's definitely.
I'm already hating on the Warriors just because like they pay the most in the league, right? Like the league's not it's not a hard cap, so like it's not there's no equality in the league. Like if you're if you're a small market team, you don't got advantages on that, and then you already got the advantage of being the head coach of Team USA on top of that. Like, come on, man.
Yeah, it's definitely.
We Coach Kerr, we saw you tampering, man.
A little messy, bro, but I understand it based on what they need. So,
who do you think's been the biggest disappointment so far?
I think biggest disappointment for me, honestly, is gonna be Dallas. I feel like there's been a lot of talk about them in the last like 2 weeks specifically, where I think they had like a 5 or 6 game losing skid. They had a bunch of bad losses. And I hate to say this because I like Luka a lot, but I'm getting a lot of the kind of similar hate or criticism that James Harden started to get once everyone kind of started to fall out of love with him, Like I think when he first got to Houston and everyone was like, wow, he's unbelievable. Look what OKC was, basically hiding away from everybody, when he just came out off the rip and was pulling up.
It's funny, you say you hate to say that, but bro, what is the difference between both of them?
There's really not that much of a difference.
There really isn't that big of a difference. Like they're like the same dude, man.
They're basically the same dude, just someone who's gonna, bleed the clock with just dribbling for 20 seconds, and then give somebody a corner or wing three if he's not going to take that shot. And I think that people had an anticipation that Spencer Dinwiddie would be able to fulfill that kind of like Jalen Brunson role of someone who can like truly go ISO one-on-one, and he'd really that's just not his game fully. So Lucas had the ball in his hands more than normal, and I think people kind of took that for granted when Brunson was there. And now they're just a really stagnant offense, and I think it's definitely showing in terms of their standing right now. Because I think they're 9. Yeah, so they're 9 in the West. They're 2 games, but they're 2 games behind the Jazz. It's going to be tough for them to get into the playoffs. Like they are a play-in team at this point in my mind. So it's definitely been disappointing. But when you look at that roster top to bottom, it kind of makes sense. And I think that a lot of us, myself included, kind of fell into that. Just kind of Luka aura. I mean, he was my preseason MVP pick, but yeah,
he's
definitely
still got a chance though.
He's still got a chance, and he'll always be in that conversation. And alluding to that same pick that I made a couple months ago, it's always about narrative. Luka is a media darling, for lack of better words. Like they're always gonna kind of kiss up to him for lack of better words. So we'll see, but definitely a disappointment. A quarter way through the season,
right. No, I mean, it's been interesting, and I feel like Jason Kidd's been getting a lot of hate. But, I mean, I don't really know with this roster, like, what else he needs to be doing. Like, is it maybe he's playing Reggie Bullock less because he's been really bad this year shooting the ball. Like, as somebody who's what is Reggie Bullock shooting for 3? Let me take a look. He's shooting 30% for 3 on 4 attempts a game. Like you as a starter, like you can't be doing that. And then like I just feel like they don't have as many guys that can create on their own. So
yeah,
Luka's got to carry such a big weight on his shoulders. I mean, for me, like the most disappointing team, honestly, right now, it's kind of looking like the Raptors for me. Like I was thinking that they were going to take a step forward.
Facts.
they got so many intriguing players on the roster, but ultimately, I think Fred VanVleet's been a little bit disappointing. And I think that to me, like if there's any trade that's like a dark horse, or I'm sorry, any team that's a dark horse to make a trade, it's them. They got pieces. Like they could really make. I saw somebody on Twitter the other day had a trade like, what about Karl Anthony Towns to the Raptors for like what, like Scotty Barnes and it's Gary Trent or something like that. I'm like, okay, like they really got pieces that they could use.
That's an interesting point because I think that the T-Wolves specifically for you have to be a disappointment because you were so big on them, and I told you that Rudy Gobert's trash. I told you he's trash,
bro. All right. If we're really gonna rehash this right now, here's where I'm at. Here's where I'm at.
He's chips.
First off, I don't think he's trash, but I hate watching him. Oh my god, he's like the worst player to watch, man.
Yeah, he really is.
He's so slow and like always seems like he's a second late, and like he is not fun to watch. But I'm interested to see like how they do when Cat is out, because that's been the problem. Like really, the problem's been like Cat is not a 4 defensively. So like you really, if you're not playing a zone or if you're not doing like hedging on your ball screens, like that's hard. Like Karl Anthony Towns is not the type of dude that can switch on defense, and it's kind of messing their spacing up on offense too. Because think of who are their shooters, right? Like so Anthony Edwards, like outside of Cat, like you got McDaniels and D'Angelo Russell's not having a really good year.
No,
so somebody like Anthony Edwards is really not playing in that much space.
Yeah.
So no, they've been disappointing too. I thought they were going to be better. I thought maybe because they were doing something different. I thought maybe they were zigging while everyone else was zagging. But it really just looked like old school basketball that ain't nobody trying to watch.
Facts. I think that to your point, I think there was an expectation that they would look similar to how the Cavs are looking right now, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But because Cat is not Evan Mobley, right? And that's the difference. Like Cat cannot guard someone who's 6'9" to 6'7", kind of shifty slasher type. Evan Mobley can move his feet and actually defend guys who are much smaller than him. Cat doesn't have that ability, so they're just it's an ugly scene. But I think back to your point with Toronto, it would be interesting to see what they do at the deadline. But I would slightly not necessarily disagree that they need to make a trade, but I think that they need to go get like a 2 or a 2 guard or a 3 versus another big man, right? Someone who can just take the pressure off of Fred VanVleet from a kind of guard creation kind of perspective. So we'll see what they do, but again, to your point, I had them ranked somewhere in like kind of middle tier playoff team level, and they're definitely not playing at that right now.
Right. I mean, I will say though, Siakam's balling.
He's hooping. He's hooping.
Bro, he is averaging 25, almost 9 rebounds and 7 assists. Like, they need to get that man some help. There's no way that team should be like playing at the level that they are right now. And I don't feel like they've been, because they're not the Lakers. They're not getting the kind of hate that they deserve, right?
Yeah. No, they're definitely not in conversation. I feel like, to your point, leading into the Lakers, always have to talk about them. Everyone talks about them.
Did you see Charles Barkley what he said about the Lakers?
Oh, he was just like they're awful. Get them off national television. And it's funny because that game, watching that against the Celtics, I was just like, this was turning into a really bad collapse for the Celtics. And ironically, I was like on NBA Twitter at the same time, and people are like, wow, look at the Celtics collapsing. And then Lakers Twitter was kind of like hopping into it, being like, it's okay. They do this every game. They make like a little comeback in like the late third quarter, early fourth quarter, and then blow it at the end. And they were up by 13 with like 4.5 to go. Anthony Davis misses those 2 free throws with like 25 seconds left. Tatum hits that tough jumper over LeBron. and then we go to overtime, and we all know how it finished out well for the Celtics. But it's definitely it's just an ugly roster, man. Like, it's just there's no there's no shooting, and I feel like they're so undersized, especially relative to how they were, 2 years ago when they won that bubble championship. That was a tall, athletic, lanky team, and now it feels like they're just subbing out a bunch of 6'4" dudes who can't shoot.
Right. Right. I know. I mean, that's the thing is like, so like their starting lineup, right, is Dennis Schroeder, Pat Bev, and Lonnie Walker.
Ugh.
Like
what are we doing?
I don't know. And like, I really just don't know like what they need to do. Like who are they trading? Like, cause like if they're trading somebody, it's somebody that's playing well for them right now.
Probably
right?
Russ. It's probably Russ.
I mean, but Russ has been like people like
he's been playing well
right now. Right now, Russ has the highest odds to be sixth man of the year.
I didn't know that.
So do you, I mean, I know he's making a lot and is an expiring contract, but like, do you trade the potential sixth man of the year? I don't think you do. Like,
if you want to be competitive in the long run, you don't trade him. I just think that Pelinka has backed himself into a corner where it's like your options are, trade away 2 to 3 of like your kind of bench assets. So some combination of like, P-Bev, Austin Reeves, Lonnie Walker, plus one of those picks that he's dead set on not giving up, or leveraging Russ. Right. So I think that he's got to pick one or the other, but, and I know that there's been a lot of talk in the last like day or two about, going after Kuzma, but I think that Kuzma takes a lot to go get, to go get that type of a quality of a guy. So I don't know what Pelinka does, but he's going to have to do something or else this is a bubble team at best.
That would be wild if that's the dude that they get because they had him.
No, literally.
They literally had him. That would be so wild. I mean, I think that if they trade those picks to, like, if you're LA, like, you have the luxury of making a move like that because you get players in free agency.
Yeah.
So, like, okay, maybe you're not able to rebuild through the draft, but you're the Lakers. Like, you're always going to be able to get players.
Yeah.
So, like, to me, I just don't really understand why they're holding on to him. But I mean,
I think it's because Pelinka sees LeBron as fleeting. You know what I mean? Like him staying in LA is at this point totally relative to where Bronny ends up. So it's like
right.
you have no guarantee that yes. So to your point, you're the Lakers. You have an aura to you. You'll always be able to get free agents to a certain extent. But a lot of that mind frame right now is because you have LeBron and AD, right? So people want to come play with those guys. But if we wake up in 2025 and LeBron is off in Utah playing with the Sun, like that draw is just not as big. So I understand thinking about the future to a certain degree, but in my mind, it's like you've got a top 2 guy of all time on your roster, and then you've got AD who's playing at about top 10, 12, in the league right now level. You got to sell the house and go win. Like I don't think there's an option. I mean,
because the West is like it's
weak.
Feels wide
open.
Weak. Like
it's weak right now. Like
we got the Jazz at the 8 seed, the Kings at the 7 seed, like the broken Clippers at the 6 seed, the Trailblazers at the 5 seed, the Suns who've had Chris Paul injured at the 4 seed. Like, what are we talking about? Go win now, man.
Sell the house, man. I mean, you got to take. I mean, look at what their their crosstown team did, the Rams in football. Like that team, they're switching sports here. That team is screwed for the next decade, but they got a ring, and that's all that matters. So, right. So at this point, sell the house, man, because you don't know where LeBron's going to be in about 3 to 4 years. So,
right.
Who gives a crap?
What do you think? What do you think the Chicago Bulls? Circling back to teams that are disappointing and we think could make a trade at the deadline. What do we think the Chicago Bulls should do? What do you think?
It's painful, man. Like I feel bad. Like I feel like I can call myself a Chicagoan at this point. It's been like 5 years. Like I feel like I've adopted them as like a second favorite team. I really like that Levine DeRozan backcourt, but it doesn't work if you don't have an elite point guard. And at this point, Lonzo's career is up in the air. You know what I mean? Of him even getting back on the floor, which is like a whole other conversation in and of itself. But if they don't have him, I think you have to blow it up. Because I just don't think that they work together without that elite playmaker that can just kind of make the offense flow. Because watching them right now, it's ugly. It's just a lot of their offense just feels really stagnant, and it's just, Levine takes his turn, DeMar takes his turn. And that's just kind of the extent of their offense. So I think at this point you probably trade DeMar because he's the older of the two, and see what you can get back. But I think at some point, I don't know if they blow it up this year. I think that they might just kind of ride it out and hope that Lonzo might be able to start the 2023-2024 season healthy and see where it goes. But I wouldn't be surprised if they made some slight moves at the deadline, and then really pulled the trigger on one of their stars kind of over next summer. So we'll see.
To me, like it feels way too early to be rebuilding. But I mean, if there was any year to rebuild, right, it would probably be this year. And like you're not gonna have Zach LaVine forever. I don't know. Has he declined this year? Like, to me, he hasn't been like the same either.
He definitely is not. And I'll say this as someone who has him on my fantasy basketball team. His numbers have been really underwhelming.
Yeah.
He definitely hasn't not been playing as well. I know that he's been. I mean, I feel like he's been injured over the course of his career, honestly. But I don't know what it is. So I'll give you that. I'm really not sure what angle they take in terms of who they pick. DeMar's a little bit older. Levine's got a higher ceiling, I think is fair to say. But he definitely has regressed. He definitely is not playing as well.
What about this? Would you? Who says no to this trade right here? Right, Vucevic, Patrick Williams, and Kobe White for Ben Simmons.
Ugh, I don't know, man.
Who says no?
If I'm the Bulls, I say no.
If you're the Bulls, you say no. The only reason I'm throwing that out there is because Vooch he's got an expiring contract, right? So
fair.
Like they're probably not going to be able to re-sign him, would be my guess, or would want to re-sign him. Like if you could get another high caliber player, which there's the jury is still out as to where Ben Simmons is at, but we've seen flashes this year of old Ben Simmons. And like we said, like we don't know if they're going to get Lonzo back or what. Get you somebody that can handle the ball, that can play defense. Obviously you don't want to give up Pat Williams, but
yeah,
I just think like who are they going to be able to get of the quality player like somebody like I feel like they got to make a trade, something like that, if they're going to make a trade. They got to get something back that, to me, like doesn't put them in rebuilding mode, but more like retooling mode a little bit.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I just don't know if they're going to have the leverage to be able to like retool. I think if they blow it up, I think that they're going to blow it up, and I think that they're going to restart, which is shitty, honestly. I would rather not see it. But
right. It's like we were talking about this before the podcast. Like Vooch, they just traded for 2 years ago, like mid-season, right?
Yeah.
Lonzo, they just came last year. Like this is still like a new project, and it really does feel. And I don't know if that's just us hearing Bulls fans complain or what, but like it feels way too early to be doing all this. But they have a window of opportunity here.
Yeah, it's to your point. I can't even sit here and think of who they would go out and get that could like help them retool. I feel like I've seen a lot of not a lot of chatter, but I've seen like Levine to the Mavs type of scenarios, and it's like, what do you really get back there? It's just like a bunch of random, like, Tim Hardaway Jr. and a pick, like or plus Maxi Cleaver, I just don't know. I just don't know who's going to help them, retool. It just seems like they have a very specific style, and they need a Lonzo Ball type to be able to go to get that offense moving. And I just don't know who that guy is, who someone else is comfortable with moving.
Right.
Maybe it's a Russ. Now that I'm saying it.
I mean, but like Russ got an expiring contract, right? Like why would they? I mean, are they taking Russ with the intention of signing somebody in free agency this year? Like, I guess Chicago could be like a decent free agent destination, but I feel like isn't this year's free agent class like kind of weak? I feel like.
Is it? I'm about to look it up.
A little bit. I mean, so I want to say James Harden might be like the top of this year's free agent class.
Yeah, it's Russ, Chris Middleton, James Harden, Kyrie Irving. That's a really interesting one. Kristaps, K Love, D'Angelo Russell. Kind of falls off a cliff. Fred VanVleet, who's an Illinois guy. Funny enough, but yeah, then it kind of falls off pretty steeply. It actually is kind of a deep free agent class as I'm looking at this. A lot of just
it's not top heavy. That's what
exactly.
So like there's no heavy hitter like somebody like that we're on edge about where they're going. Also, James Harden definitely re-signed his contract at the beginning of the year, so I don't think he's a free agent.
Says he's got a player option.
Oh, well, if he has, so maybe he re-signed with a player. Yeah, because remember, it was like the whole talk about how he took less money to like stay, so they could sign Montrezl Harrell.
That's facts. Montrezl.
Which I don't know how well that's working out for James. If there's any lesson to be learned here, get your bag. Get your bag when you can.
Yeah, for real. Yeah, I feel like segueing into Philly, like they've been another kind of underwhelming team. I think that they're kind of where they're who we expect. I think that Tyrese Maxey being out for an extended period of time has definitely hurt them to a certain degree, but I just look at them with the same kind of like whateverness that I almost always do. Like I just don't view them as a real competitor this year. I think preseason I had pretty high expectations for them, but pulling my Celtics fandom card here, like they don't scare me, right? Like they just like Embiid obviously is a force, but like the rest of that team just doesn't really do it for me. I don't know how you feel about them.
I mean, so I think pretty clearly, like the PJ Tucker signing was. I feel like he's getting a little over the hill faster than we thought, so that definitely hasn't helped. But then, I mean, yeah, I don't really feel like we've seen them at full strength, but when they were at full strength, they definitely looked out of sorts. But I think that's just a function of they haven't played together that much. Really, if you think of when Harden came last year, and I will say this: like I've liked what I've seen from Tobias Harris. He looks like he's kind of
playing well,
rejuvenated his career a little bit. DeAnthony Melton's definitely looked good too, which is one of the signings I was really high on.
Yeah,
I'm not exactly sure what they need, to be honest with you. I hate to say, I really, really hate to say this, but what they might need is a new coach. And that kills me to say that because, I love Doc Rivers, but, it feels like, I don't know, in recent years, he hasn't really built off of that championship year. Like I just feel like
this has always kind of been a talking point with him. It's just that he's a player's coach, right? Like people like playing for him.
But what's funny about that though is like I feel like the most complaints about him come from the players. Right? You hear there's always smoke around. What was it? Paul George was complaining about how he used him as he was Ray Allen, and he didn't like that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
There's always been like these little subtle jabs at him from player here, player there.
That's right.
I don't know, man. I can't think of a player that I'm like, oh, they need to trade for this, right? They could probably use some more shooting. They could probably use a little more defense, like most teams could.
Yeah.
But I feel like they got the talent.
Hmm.
I feel they got a legitimate number one option. To me, I still think James Harden is a number two option. I think Tyrese Maxey is a really good number three option, right? And then they got
damn near two.
Yeah, they're right, and they got the role players for days.
Yeah, they do.
I just don't. To me, that's if there's anything that I would say maybe. I don't know about a mid-season shakeup. Look at what it's done for the Nets, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man, how crazy would it be if Udoka ended up in Philly?
Dude, I think.
Can you imagine?
I think he's done. I don't.
You don't think he's coming back to the league?
I don't think anyone's going to give him a shot.
I mean, if the Nets weren't going to give him a shot, then who's going to give him a shot, right?
I feel like he might be able to sneak himself in on someone's staff.
Right.
But how ugly that was at the peak of it, I just don't see another owner throwing themselves into that fire. It just immediately puts you in an ugly PR situation, So I think that most ownership groups are probably going to avoid that at best.
I can see that, and it's not getting to the point they're 15-12. It's a slow start, but I mean, every once in a while, Joel Embiid's been putting up 50, right? And you're like, oh, okay, all right, it's coming, but I still want to see him at full strength, and I'm not ready to give up on him just yet. I still think they're a contending level team.
Yeah, I agree. One question I did want to ask, because I feel as I'm looking at the current standings right now, I think most teams in the playoff race on both sides are pretty fair for the most part, but I think the biggest surprise has to be the Kings. Where they've from where they were last year to where they are now, but it seems like the Sabonis De'Aaron Fox duo is just working to perfection at this point, and their role players are really solid. Swinging this back to the Lakers conversation, a guy like Malik Monk, you probably shouldn't have let him go. He was your best shooter last year. He can create a little bit between him and Herder. Davion Mitchell has taken a nice little step. This past year, they're looking pretty solid. I think it's good for the league that they're finally competitive. Will they be able to maintain this throughout the duration of the season? Who knows? But they've been fun to watch. I'll say that at a minimum.
Right, and it's so funny because I remember when the Tyrese Halliburton trade happened.
Oh, dude!
People were killing the Kings, right? They were killing them, and I'm over here saying what? They got an all-star player who's Sabonis is 26 years old, right?
Yeah.
They got a core. De'Aaron Fox, 25 years old. Sabonis, 26 years old. Herder, 24. Malik Monk, 24. Once that Harrison Barnes contract goes up this year, to me, they seem like an intriguing place for somewhere to land a free agent, maybe because they got a core that you could sell them on. They're having a good year. I like what they've done. They've drafted well. Keegan Murray's got some promise.
Yeah.
But there is something to be said for people who are like, okay, but you traded Tyrese Halliburton's clearly got almost superstar potential written all over him to make the playoffs a few times. But to me, I get it, but if you're the Kings, you just need to make the playoffs, right? That's a win. They've gone so long without making the playoffs that I get it. Maybe they're not a contender, but if you can build some momentum, then maybe you could make something happen.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree, and it would be interesting to see if they could get something once that Harrison Barnes contract gets off the books, and I'm sure that they'll have a close to lottery pick this upcoming year. So if they can get another piece, they'll be interesting to see.
I hope they get. I hope they make the playoffs.
Oh, I
I,
agree.
I I need to see them send the beam into the sky on a
light
on a
light the beam, bro. I feel
on a
like they,
warm May evening in Sacramento.
bro. I feel like they have like zero primetime games. Like I feel like the only
I know.
I feel like I've only watched them this year through League Pass.
It got to be a league, definitely a league pass special for sure.
Bro, I'll say this. This is my first year owning League Pass. I'm watching that shit daily.
Oh
Love it.
God, I love it. I
Bro,
love it. I love it.
have you watched Crunch Time?
No, I haven't watched Crunch Time.
Bro, Crunch Time's fire, man. It's basically there for the listeners. It's basically their version of NFL Red Zone. So
How
like
do you find it? Like, where is it in the app? Is it just like
so it's
because you told me about this, but I definitely like tried to look for it. And I'm like,
not
I gave it up like after
so
2
like
seconds.
so like when you're in the app, you'll hit the drop down and then you'll see like all of the games, and then right under it, it's so they have a game section and then they have a show section. So it's under where it says shows, and then so they really only do it on like Monday nights, which I think is basically the NBA's like almost more teams than not are in action on Monday nights. So basically they'll just jump from game to game, and it doesn't flow as well as Red Zone. Obviously Red Zone's been doing this for, a decade plus at this point. But it's just a fun way to watch it so that you're getting like a little bit of action across the league at the same time. So if you're not a subscriber, would highly recommend, but definitely got to check out Crunch Time.
Yeah. No, I'll definitely check it out. That sounds like something I would really like.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yo, are we ready for our first draft of the podcast?
Yes, sir.
I feel like it's that time, man. I feel like it's that time. So basically, we are going to start having drafts at the end of our shows. This week's draft, we're going to draft who we want to see win the lottery this year. Right? So we'll each draft 5 teams. We'll give our reasons why we want to see them win. How you want to do this? You want to snake it? You want to, take turns,
I think we should just each run through our 5.
No,
Yeah,
man,
well-
no, it's got to be a draft though, because like I feel like it, like I can't take a team that you take because then I can't talk about it. You know what I'm saying?
I would disagree personally, but I think that we should just run through our 5.
Man, no, we got to draft them, man, because then you got to feel good about like when we go to the lottery. When we go to the lottery and they win the lottery, you got to be like, oh, see, this is my team. They got it, right? You know what I'm saying?
Fair enough. Then we'll have to snake it then.
We'll have to snake it. All right. You go first.
Okay.
You go first.
My first team is going to be the Pistons.
Pistons.
Pistons, man, they are bottom of the barrel right now, but like I think there's a credible amount of hype around Cade. RIP to his season. That sucks. But really liking what I see out of Jaden Ivey. They got Sadiq Bey. They have, Isaiah Stewart. They've got these young pieces. The rest of that roster is not that special. Killian Hayes actually with like a sneaky solid season, ironically enough.
You know why that is though, right? Because like he's just playing with no pressure, right?
Yeah, zero pressure.
Honestly, like the whole tanking stuff, it's smart because like you can just play somebody without any like consequences and develop them. So like
that's fair.
I like what they're doing with that, even though people have been killing them for starting him.
Yeah, they definitely have, but they're getting a return out of it. So I think it seems like they have the both guard spots pretty solidly established for the next at least immediate future. But if they could sneak themselves into that Victor Wembanyama conversation, I think that they'll be really interesting next year. So yeah, that's my first pick.
Okay. All right. So then I got the next 2 picks, right?
Yeah, you go next.
Okay. So the team that I want to see, and this was the team actually at the top of my board. I want to see the Charlotte Hornets win the lottery because I think that they are so bad that it's really just going to give parity to the league, right? So that's what I ultimately want to see. Like, to me, I think like the more even the league is, the better it is. And I think it'd be cool to see LaMelo Ball in a position like that Zion's in right now, right? Like Zion has so much hype coming out, and I almost think he may be even exceeding it right now to me. Um, LaMelo obviously is a very good player. He's hurt right now. But I want to see him I want to see him be a part of a 1-2 punch, right?
Yeah.
And I think like if you're going to have a great big man of all the teams in the lottery, they could have if there's a point guard that I want to pair him with, he'd be the one. So I think Charlotte would be cool. And then at my number 2 pick, I'm going to go with the Spurs. I want to see him on the Spurs because I think they already got a good, solid young core. And I mean, it's just funny because like I want to see them be good again. Like the NBA is fun when they're good, and Pop is still around, and they still got, you know, some competitiveness in them. That I think if he joined their team, like that's an instant playoff team. And that's a team that you're really worried about because they got a coach that's experienced in coaching somebody like that. Like I don't want to see Victor be wasted. And I feel like if there's anywhere that he could maximize his potential, it's probably in San Antonio.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. All right, so then my next 2 would be OKC and Houston. So with OKC, I think this is not necessarily the least likely, but I think an unlikely outcome, unless, barring like a massive season-ending injury from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I just think that they're going to be too competitive over the course of the year to actually like really get into that category. But if they were to, I think that that'd be just a really, really interesting scenario for OKC where I think Shai would be a little bit less inclined to request a trade, which I think a lot of people have an inkling that he'll try to do at some point, just because of how freaking talented he is and kind of just being at like his peak. I mean, at this point, he's not even close to his peak, which is the scary part. But I think that he's going to get to a point where he's like, okay, this is the caliber of a player that I am. Like, I want to start winning. I want to start being in the playoffs. But if they can go get a guy like Victor, pair him up with Chet, who hasn't even played this year, which is crazy to think about. People aren't even talking about it. Guy was the number 2 pick last year. I think that'll be a really dangerous team, plus Josh Giddey coming along, Luke Dort, they've got some nice pieces, man. So I would definitely be interested to see him over in OKC. And then for Houston, kind of similar reasons, right? They've got, a really solid, guard core in Kevin Porter Jr. and Jalen Green. Jabari Smith is turning into the guy that I think that we all expected him to be. Is not necessarily that, top tier star, but super solid on the defensive end, can guard a lot of different spots. But he's kind of turning into that traditional 4, which is again what I think most people expected. But I think that they could use a guy like Victor at the 5. And even as I'm saying that now, Segun is hooping right now for them. So it's like, it seems like that they have, a lot of young talent that they could kind of build off of. So I would definitely be interested to see them at the top of that board as well next year.
My only thing with Houston is I feel like I just want to see him play like with a good point guard. Like that's the only thing that I'm wondering. That's to me like Kevin Porter. I don't know if he's a point. Like he's good. Like don't get me wrong. Just don't know if he's a point guard. Like I want to see him. I want to see him play somewhere where they're gonna have like him ready to go. Like and playing together. That was my only thing. Now, with that being said, I'm about to pick a team that's got question marks at the point guard position. And my number 3 pick, give me the Magic. I would love to see that because, I mean, it's the same thing kind of with OKC. Like, you got crazy length. Bol, Paolo, Franz. Like, John, is Jonathan Isaac ever going to play, man? What is good with Jonathan Isaac, man?
Bro, he got the All Lives Matter curse. After he jumped on the All Lives Matter train.
Dang.
But yeah, I don't know what's up with him, bro. He's like 20. He's like 25, and dude hasn't played in like 2 years. It's crazy.
This is the second time I've brought him up on the podcast, but it's crazy. Nobody's talking about him, and I'm dying to see him play for some reason. I don't know. I don't even know why.
Yeah.
And then with my fourth pick, I'm gonna go with the Pelicans. Because if the Lakers they've got the Lakers pick, if the Lakers, just self-combust, that could very well be a pick. And that is, I mean, if they're
terrifying.
not already a contender, that is like ooh, man. That is a crazy contender. And like the thing that's so crazy about it is like that team, to me, this is crazy. I even feel crazy saying this out loud. They have like Warriors dynasty potential. Like, am I tweaking for saying that?
I don't think that that's out of the question. I mean, Brandon Ingram is an all-star level small forward. Zion, all-star level power forward. CJ McCollum he's been a borderline all-star basically for the last 6 years or so.
It's like they already got the role players ready to go, man. They got like
Alvarado, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, Dyson Daniels,
bro. They're crazy deep. Like
they're
Larry
really deep.
Nance, like even right now, like I'm looking at them like contender. I really think that they could be coming out of the West. Like it wouldn't be that crazy for me to say that.
Especially
and then if you add Victor, like that's a team
that's terrifying.
Like I'm dead serious when I say this 10-year window.
Yeah,
like a 10-year win. Like that's anyways. So those are my two picks. How many we got left?
I think I'm on my last two. So,
yeah, you got your last two.
You actually stole my last two with
the
Magic and the Hornets. So I will go with the Wizards, and I'll go with the Jazz. Or actually, no, I'll go with the T-Wolves. I'll switch that up because I think the Jazz are going to be a bubble team this year. I think the T-Wolves have more of a possibility of actually tanking it. But yeah, so with the T-Wolves, I think that that would be a really interesting scenario. So let's say hypothetically that they don't make a trade at the deadline. They still have Gobert. They still have Karl Anthony Towns. I think that's a case where you probably have to go and take Scoot over Victor, or you make some sort of trade.
Did I tell you my mom told me she's taking Scoot over Victor?
Your mom's always got the hot takes, bro. Shout out, Mr. Shapiro. But she's always got the hot takes, bro, constantly. And Scoot's cold, bro. Scoot's really, really cold. But I mean, the T-Wolves are like one of the only teams in the NBA, probably them and like Cleveland, where you even entertain Scoot. Because otherwise, it's Victor, But I think it would be interesting to see what the T-Wolves would do, because I think that you would probably have to consider trading one of the two big men that you have now, and then maybe going to get Victor, or if they're just going to double down on Rudy and Cat, then go after Scoot. But I think it would be interesting, and I think Scoot would be really good for Anthony Edwards' development, because D'Angelo Russell is not that guy, obviously. So I think that would be an interesting one. And then my other pick was the Wizards, where I think it's, I
don't like that pick.
You don't like the Wizards?
I don't like that pick. No. I don't like the Wizards pick because I feel like Kristaps going to leave because he's a free agent. And then he's literally stepping into that role. And I feel like they're damn near the same team.
Yeah, you're not wrong, but I think kind of to the point of maybe giving yourself some leverage from a free agency standpoint. Like if you have a combo of Brad Beal and Victor Wembanyama, that would be relatively appealing as a potential free agent. So I don't. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to remember the last time the Wizards got a good free agent though. Like, who was the best free agent that the Wizards ever got? I couldn't even off the top of my head. I just don't really feel like that's a free agent destination.
It's definitely not, but I mean, a free agent destination can pop up out of nowhere based on whether on what the talent is that becomes available. So I think that, come the end of the season, I think that the Wizards will be in that top 3 conversation. Like, they're just not a good roster. I think that they move Kuzma, whether it's to the Lakers or elsewhere. But they're not winning anytime soon. So I think that they'll be in that conversation. And, Kristaps is, shout out Kristaps, but he's kind of dead weight at this point. So, Victor can kind of jump into that slot.
Right. Before I go into my last pick here, I had to look it up. I had to see who was the Wizards' best free agent signing.
Larry Hughes.
He's on the list. He's on the list. But that kind of illustrates my point. Bob Dandridge, who I don't know who that is, but damn.
No, it's nuts. It's got to be Gilbert.
I mean, Gilbert is probably like the best signing because, but it wasn't like a signing like they were signing a big free agent. It was like
that's facts.
They got him before he was Gilbert, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm saying, if you're gonna land somebody that's nice like that, like
Bob Dandridge.
Bob Dandridge is the best one. I'm like,
is that the 70s?
That is the 70s. Yeah.
That's the 70s. That's what I was about to say. That was a long time.
Yeah.
That was a long ass time ago.
Shout out to Bob Dandridge.
Shout out Bob Dandridge.
I don't know who you are, but I'm about to learn after the podcast.
I've played with Bob Dandridge on 2Ks. He's pretty solid. Can't really shoot very well, but solid slasher.
The quote in this article says, "I constantly read in the paper that Bobby Dandridge, who's playing for Milwaukee, could really guard Dr. J." I'm like, all right,
you can lock it
up. Anyways, with my last pick, I got the Chicago Bulls. I would love to see the Chicago Bulls be good again, man. I mean, obviously this is a selfish pick because we both live in Chicago. If they make the playoffs and make some noise, we're turning up. But really, honestly, I think he would fit in really well from day one because Vucevic is a free agent after this year. If they're patient with Lonzo, if Lonzo is ever able to recover, they got a built-in. I want to say, we're talking a little crazy about Victor. Nobody's really sure how good he's going to be, but if there's anything we've seen so far this year, that Bol is kind of like a prototype for what he could be like, but maybe even more. He's going to be able to make an impact from day one, and that's a place where he could really make an impact and be upper echelon Eastern Conference type of team right away. And definitely. I just think the legacy of the Bulls too. These fans, man, they're dying for
crazy
that player, that franchise player.
They are.
D Rose, You talk to anybody around here about Chicago basketball, man, they are so thirsty for another D Rose, man.
Yeah.
And as much as I love Levine, he's not really like that. Not saying he's not good, but I mean, are you talking about I'm talking about an A team, right? There's only a few of them in the league. I know this dude can lead me to a finals.
Yeah.
And I think this city would probably appreciate it more than most.
Yeah. No, definitely. It would be interesting. But I feel like they're going to be a little bit too competitive this year to be able to get into that conversation. But we'll see. Again,
we'll see what they do at the deadline.
Exactly. They might make some moves. But to your previous point, shout out Bol, man. I'm glad to see that he's getting the opportunity and he's really making the most of it, man. I mean, to your point, he looks just like Victor Wembanyama. Obviously, different categories. I think Victor has a higher ceiling, but 7'2", handles the rock really well, can shoot pretty solidly, good on the defensive end of the floor. It was obviously kind of a frustrating situation for him over in Denver, but I'm glad to see that he's getting some minutes over in Orlando and really making the most of it.
Bro, he is shooting 66% from 2, 40% from 3, almost 80 from the line. 7 rebounds a game, almost 2 blocks. Like, I really do think he's got a chance to stick in the league. It's been exciting. Me and Eli Kane from DePaul, we used to always talk about him, like how we thought he was going to be nice. And it's really like, honestly, like I was ready to give up on him. And it's cool to see, so much of all of this is about your situation and where you're at, right? Like James Harden looked completely different in OKC than he did for the Rockets. Like I'm just wondering, who is that dude right now that is sitting on somebody's bench, not being utilized, that if they went to another team is like going to be like breaking out like that? Like, it's who do you think is that dude?
That's a really good question. My pick is Cam Reddish. Dude, I love Cam Reddish's game, bro. I really do.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, and I'm at this like conflicted point where it's like, am I allowing my like just fandom of him to like overtake like what he actually is? But I feel like everybody inside the league and around the league is like, this dude is super talented, and in this case, Tibbs just won't give him any minutes, and they've already committed to looking for a trade partner. But there's been a lot of flashes, especially he was getting minutes early in the season. I remember, I think they were playing Memphis on that opening night, and the dude had like 24, hit like a game tying 3 to send it to overtime. And you see the flashes where he's clearly got all the talent in the world. I mean, 6'8", good athlete, can play. He's not amazing on the defensive end of the floor, but that's more of an effort issue than anything else. So the guy's clearly got the intangibles to be a solid role player at a minimum. But I think his ceiling is still as high as it was when he walked into the league. So I think he's that guy in the right scenario who could be a real solid piece for a potential playoff team.
I mean, I've seen his name thrown around for the Lakers.
Yeah.
For the Lakers trade, that which would be interesting, but I don't know about I mean, it's a good fit from on the court standpoint. Seems like a risk for the Lakers. That's the only thing that I think about that. Just because he's been in the Hawks were trying to contend and be a playoff team. The Knicks are trying to contend and be a playoff team. Right now, the Knicks are the 6th seed, which totally caught me by surprise. I'm gonna be honest. I didn't even know that at this moment in time. But I would love to see him be in a bowl type of situation where he's I don't know, gets traded to the Hornets and gets the ball out or somewhere like that. I keep bringing up the Hornets just because I think they're so bad.
They're terrible, man.
every time I like I don't know, the Celtics play them or something, I can't watch it, man. It is. Ugh.
Yeah, they're garbage.
Yeah. Hey, my pick for that, I'm going to have to go with my man Paul Reed, man.
P. Reed, bro.
Think about it. Bol was behind Jokic. P. Reed is behind Embiid, right? Playing on a team where they're trying to contend. Like, he's got the talent. And when he's played, man, he's produced.
Yeah, he has.
Produces every time, especially in that rebounding column. There are teams in the league that would kill for that kind of rebounding and just ability to make something happen out of nothing. Like I think when he gets to his next team, I really do think he's going to be putting up some numbers.
Got to get P. Reed to Sacramento.
Ooh. Okay.
You know what I mean? Somewhere where he's not like, I don't necessarily see a team like Sac starting him over a Keegan Murray or a Sabonis in the long term. But like, if you can get him, 20 minutes a game, I see some similarities with, like, he's not a Zion type of player, but he's a Zion type of player from the efficiency perspective, right? He gives you really good minutes when you give him those minutes. And I think that he just doesn't have the ability to be able to crack the rotation on a consistent basis when you're trying to, go win a championship right now. But to your point, he definitely has a high ceiling.
For sure. What else, man? You got any closing thoughts? Any
Well, I think we should just quickly revisit our preseason award picks and see how they're trending.
For sure.
For rookie of the year, most improved, and MVP. So, do you want to start or should I go?
You can go.
Got you. So for MVP, I had Luka. So we already kind of touched on this a little bit. he still has a chance. It's obviously early in the year. I think that they'll sneak their way into the playoffs, one way or the other. But it's definitely been an ugly start, and I think that the James Harden comparison is pretty on point. So I think it's still up in the air. I think he's definitely not the favorite at this point. I think the NBA has him in like that 5 or 6 range in terms of like their MVP power rankings, but I think a lot of that's relative to just how the team has started. So we'll see about that. Rookie of the year, Paolo Banchero. I mean, he's been, I think, frankly, better than expected. I mean, he looks really serious, and I think it's one of those situations where you don't really get the full breadth of what the guy can be in college because it's such a different game. But now that he's just got like a lot more space, like it just feels like watching him. He just feels like a bigger player. Like I don't know what it is. I don't even know if that makes any sense. But I feel like I took for granted that the guy is like a legit 6'10", 6'11", lanky, can guard damn near 1 through 4 and some 5s. But then gives you a little bit of everything offensively. Has a lot of eerily similar comparisons to Melo. Those early Nuggets years. He looks very similar. So I think that he's still. I
feel like as crazy as this feels to say, I feel like he's got more LeBron than Melo to his game.
I don't think that he has that explosive athleticism the way that LeBron does.
You don't think so?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
not at that. I mean, LeBron is a one-of-one athlete. Obviously, give it that caveat, but he reminds me more of the early Melo days, where Melo was throwing it on people. He was a really good athlete in those early years. But I think he's closer to Melo than he is to LeBron, and LeBron is a freak, so it's harder to compare.
I don't know. I feel like he's got like way more power to his game than I thought, like finesse. You know what I mean? Like I was expecting
that was Melo. Melo was a bully.
He was, but like I'm like you're saying, like Paolo is like physically imposing. Like
yeah, he is.
He is not your average rookie. Like
no, it's not.
I really like Melo. I feel like silky smooth. Like yeah, he was definitely like a dog in his early days, but it feels almost wrong to say this, but I feel like Paolo's and he doesn't have the playmaking ability like LeBron, but like if I were to just put like LeBron like scoring LeBron, like I'm thinking that he might be that might be like who he is, and ultimately ends up being like scoring LeBron, which is scary.
It's terrifying, and yeah. I don't think what you're saying is like totally out of the question. I guess I personally just see a little bit more Melo in him, but either way, the point remains: the dude's freaking serious. So,
and he's going to be Rookie of the Year.
He's going to be Rookie of the Year.
I don't see any way anybody else gets it.
No, not even close. Benedict Mathurin will creep into the conversation, but it's not. It's really not that close. And then most improved, Tyrese Halliburton, which I think stays consistent.
Right.
He's the dude's just cold, man. He's just got the whole package. So I think that he'll definitely be in that conversation, and he's elevating that team to a potential playoff team. I mean, they look like a play-in team at a minimum. But yeah, man, they've been playing really well, and honestly brings up an interesting conversation of what that organization does going forward, especially with guys like Buddy Hield and Miles Turner, who have been constantly in trade rumors. But nonetheless, Tyrese has definitely elevated them, and he's only in his second year, so the ceiling is super high for him.
Right. Right. I mean, so my most improved player pick was Rui Hachimura, who, I'm going to be honest, man, Rui has gone in the opposite direction of improvement.
I honestly
no longer starting. This man, I mean,
I have no idea. I don't even know what's up with him right now. I'm literally about to look up his stats, seeing what's up with him.
I really just, it's one of those, the Wizards are like one of those teams I just don't care about. Like I just
Facts.
But yeah, I just picked him because early on in his career, I thought he had promise, but I don't know. Maybe he needs a new situation. And then, yeah, I had the same pick, Paolo for Rookie of the Year. That one's looking on point. I had Joel Embiid for MVP, which I think is a tough one because the guy who's got a good team around him, I feel like is always at a disadvantage. But I will say, like, he's had random explosions of games where he's just goes absolutely nuts, dropping 50, crazy amounts of rebounds. I mean, you know, the man is averaging 33 points a game, right? Like,
Yeah.
like, and it really it feels like a quiet 33. Like, at what point has that ever happened? Like, when could you have ever said like? I feel like it averaging 30 doesn't mean what it used to mean before
No.
because I feel like there's so many dudes doing it. Right?
There's so many dudes who average 30.
Joel Embiid is averaging 33 points a game, and I don't feel like anybody's talking about him for MVP because they've been almost 500, right?
Yeah.
Still think he's got a chance. I mean,
yeah. But you know, Tatum has the narrative right now. You know,
right.
and like at the end of the day, it's a narrative driven award. So come the end of the season, I think that he's probably in the conversation. You know, I would assume that they finish in the top 3 in the Eastern Conference. So I think that he'll still be there, but it's definitely going to be a little bit tougher for him. But you're not wrong. It's definitely been a super quiet 33 and not a lot of conversation around him.
Yeah. No, it definitely has. And I mean, I get it. Like the Sixers are hurt, but it is really just so frustrating to see like how the NBA is covered and mainstream media only talking about like 4 teams and the Lakers being one of them who have, like Charles Barkley said, like they're the most talked about 12 seed he's ever seen. And so like, yeah, a guy like Joel Embiid's not being talked about. You know, Denver is pretty good this year. I don't feel like anybody's talking about Denver. It's just like frustrating. So that's why I like that we come on here and try to talk about as many teams as we can, right?
Facts.
Well, that's all. That's about all I got, man. You got anything else?
Same, bro. No, definitely glad we were able to hop back on today. And yeah, looking forward to more conversations down the road.
Hey, if you guys catch us, be sure to make sure you hit that 5-star rating on either Spotify, Apple Podcasts. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you hit that like button. We got to get our numbers up, baby. Let's go.
Peace.